Have you ever blamed a virus for problems with your computer or phone? Well, you might have been wrong. Although viruses are a common cause of abnormal behavior, there's a rich and varied world of hostile software that can threaten us, and viruses are just a part of it. Generally, hostile software is called malware, a term born from the fusion of the words malicious and software. In this video, Bob is an average internet user who has been targeted by a ruthless hacker named Hackman. Hackman's goals are simple: exploit Bob and his devices to steal data and make money, or alternatively, use them to carry out his activities, which are, in most cases, illegal. Hackman knows that to achieve his goal, he can rely on different types of malware. He also knows that none of Bob's devices, not his computers, smartphones, smart TVs, or even his smartwatch, are truly safe. This is a serious and complex topic. Just consider this. Since Nidon and 80 water, it's estimated that over 1 billion different malware programs have been discovered. Some of them have caused tens of millions of dollars in damages. Let's take a closer look at the most common types of malware. Virus. The term virus is extremely well known and widely used, so much so that people often use it to describe any kind of threat to electronic devices, instead of using the more accurate word, malware. And there's a simple reason for that. Viruses were the very first type of malware in history. Back when they first appeared, there weren't many effective tools to stop them. As a result, viruses gained massive attention and became the most recognized face of cyber threats. Typically, when a device is infected by a virus, it might experience file deletions or corruptions, overall system slowdowns, or even changes to system configurations, especially those related to security settings. Let's look at an example of how a device might get infected with a virus. Bob downloads a software program from an unofficial website. It looks legitimate, but it isn't. The software has been tampered with by hackmen. Bob installs the program and unknowingly activates the virus in the process. The virus begins damaging Bob's device. It then attempts to replicate itself to other devices connected to Bob's system. If successful, it infects and damages those as well. Another very common way to come into contact with viruses is through phishing emails, especially ones containing malicious attachments. One of the most infamous cases in the history of cyber threats is a worm called I love you. The name comes from the subject line of the email it used to spread, and in the early 2000s, it caused an estimated $10 to $15 billion in damages. Bob, being a romantic soul like millions of other users, including private individuals, companies, and even governments worldwide, found an email in his inbox titled, I love you. Bob couldn't resist. He opened the email, and with that single action, his computer was infected. Worms have very similar characteristics to viruses, and they typically cause the same kinds of damage, from corrupting files to slowing down systems or changing configurations. The key difference is that worms are self-installing. This means that unlike viruses, which require manual action from the user, like installing a malicious program, worms automatically infect a device the moment they arrive. No clicks, no installs, just instant infection. Botnet. Bob has no idea, but his computer, along with countless other users' devices, is part of a botnet. A botnet is a network of infected devices secretly controlled by hackmen, all without the owner's knowledge. Each infected device becomes a bot, silently following commands from the hacker behind the scenes. Hackman uses botnets primarily for destructive purposes, leveraging the massive amount of traffic that these devices can generate to launch large-scale attacks against technological infrastructures or online services. These coordinated attacks, often called DDoS, distributed denial of service attacks, can take down websites, crash servers, and paralyze digital systems, all without the affected users even knowing their devices were involved. Hackmen can also use botnets in a more constructive way by exploiting the massive collective computing power of infected devices to mine cryptocurrencies. This practice is known as cryptojacking. In this case, Bob has no idea what's happening behind the scenes. All he notices is that his device has been unusually slow lately. What he doesn't realize is that his computer is secretly working for hackmen, solving complex cryptographic puzzles to generate digital coins and using up Bob's resources. The term spyware comes from the combination of the words spy and software. And as the name suggests, its main purpose is to collect and transmit information about the infected device and its user, all without causing any noticeable changes in the device's behavior. That's why Bob doesn't notice anything unusual happening with his devices. But in the background, spyware is quietly at work, tracking and sharing his personal data, his login credentials for websites, information about other devices on his private network, his browsers, browsing history, and even security software, his usage habits, events, calendars, and more. All this sensitive information is being monitored and sent to external servers without any consent from Bob. Bob is casually browsing the internet, unaware that the website he just visited is actually a fake replica of the original. He downloads and installs what looks like a legitimate program, but it's actually a tampered version, and now Bob's device is infected with a trojan. Trojans are particularly deceptive because they usually don't cause direct damage themselves. Instead, they create the perfect environment for other types of malware to infect the system. For example, Trojans can silently download and install additional malware. One of the most common types of malware that work hand in hand with Trojans is the keylogger. Keyloggers are very simple. Their main goal is to record every keystroke Bob makes, capturing sensitive information like passwords, messages, and personal data. It's the Trojan that ensures the information captured by the keylogger is properly sent to shady illegal servers. Or they can open a backdoor in the device's defenses, allowing hackmen to access the device directly, bypassing security measures completely. Bob has many friends with whom he communicates regularly through social media and messaging apps. One day, he receives a message from an unknown number with a link inviting him to click on it, and Bob, out of curiosity, does so. This is one of the most common ways, along with emails, that ransomware infects devices. Soon after, Bob notices that something is wrong. Many of his files are now unreadable, including the files for a project he had been working on for months. Bob is terrified, and soon after, he's contacted by hackmen who offers to resolve the issue, but only if Bob pays a certain ransom. It's a lot of money, but Bob has no choice. He can't afford to lose his work, so he sends the ransom. In return, Hackman sends Bob the secret password to unlock all of his files. What Bob has experienced is the typical case of a cryptor ransomware. However, there are two other types of ransomware: blockers, which encrypt and lock the device. These are used when the goal is to sabotage or slow down a business or personal activity. Wipers, which delete data from the device. These are used when the goal is to intentionally erase actions or data from a device. Scareware. Scareware is a different form of malware, one that rarely causes direct damage to devices. Instead, it focuses on emotionally manipulating the user. Bob is casually browsing the internet when suddenly pop-ups and alarming messages appear on his screen. The messages warn him of imminent dangerous situations that are about to unfold. Bob feels threatened, but also somewhat lucky, as some of the messages suggest solutions to resolve the danger. Trusting these prompts, Bob downloads and installs the suggested software, but unfortunately, the software is fake and hides a true threat inside, such as a Trojan or a virus. Bob's device is now infected.